By the way, you said we had a guest today. Can you tell us about our guests? And
We
I know
do.
they'll be on here in about 5 minutes.
They'll be coming on in just a little bit here, and I've really been looking forward to talking to them. They're a lovely couple out of Pennsylvania. Their names, it's so cute. Their names are Ron and Fawn, and they're a young couple, and I don't know exactly how they met. I was going to ask them that, but I was informed of this couple through my cousin, and my cousin and I are friends on Facebook. And sometimes I get a little sassy on Facebook, and I was rude. And I heard a commercial on Pandora that talked about this condition, but it didn't really go into what it was. It said it was something about HSAWARENESS. I'm like, what is that? You know, I'm always curious. I look up everything. So I did a little bit of research, but I didn't do thorough research. I didn't do any investigation into the subject. And so I made a post on Facebook. I'm like, okay, HS, it's a giant pimple. What is it? Or something sarcastic. And then my cousin goes, Paula, I suffer from that. I'm like, oh, I felt horrible. I'm like, so now I got to do my research because I just offended my cousin and I can't do that. And so I did a lot of research and I started talking to her about it. And then she said, you really need to talk to these people because they're the ones that are really super active in making their condition aware, because this condition, it only affects about 1% of the population. And it's the short name is HS because I'll probably slaughter the name. Its real term is Hidradenitis Suppurativa. They could probably tell you better how to say it. But and it also has a second name called acne inversa, which to me kind of sounds like an inverted acne, which basically what it is. So it's a condition, and as I was researching it, it seems to happen to people maybe going through puberty or that time of their life. And they start to get like an inverse acne. It's an acne that actually goes the other direction, and it tunnels through the body. It's super painful. I mean, people have excruciating pain with this. And it tunnels, it makes sinuses, it connects, and so it hurts all over. I mean, there is constant pain with this condition. And there's no cure. They don't know what causes it. A lot of people go undiagnosed because they're embarrassed of the condition, and they're not sure what it is. A lot of not young adults, but children that are getting older and maybe experiencing it, they're afraid to tell their parents because they're not even sure what's going on, and it affects kind of private areas like the buttocks, and so it's kind of embarrassing in a way, and so people hide it and they don't talk about it, and my understanding is that we need to make people aware because there's people that are suffering from this condition and they don't even know what it is because they've never heard of it. No one's talking about it. And so Ron and Fawn agreed to come on the show tonight and talk about how they can make people aware, talk about their condition and, when they started experiencing it. And
okay.
Have they queued in?
Well, they're in line. They're waiting to join us here. So
they are. Nice.
If we can bring in Ron and Fawn. I still have never heard of this disease, so I don't have any homework whatsoever. I'm just warning in advance.
Well, we're going to learn together because I've done research, but of course I don't know anything firsthand. And I'm very anxious to talk to them and get their word out.
Okay, well, Ron and Fawn are here.
Hi, Ron. Hi, Fawn.
Hi, can you hear us okay? Do you want to say hi, Fawn?
Hi.
Hi, how are you guys?
We're on the speakerphone, so you just let us know if we're fading in or out. We'll try to get closer, okay?
You guys sound good. They sound good to you, Proof?
Yeah, it's fine.
Well, Fawn and Ron, this is Proof, my co-host, every Monday night on the Proof Negative Show. And I'm somewhat new to the show. I've been co-hosting for about 4 weeks now. And I had the idea, too, to bring in different subjects, and I thought health would be a good one. So we all care about health. So anyway, I guess we'll start with you, Ron.
Sure.
And maybe talk about your condition. Now, you've experienced this starting at what age? What age did you start having symptoms?
Well, yeah, I mean, your description, you described it fairly well, and I'll say you did pronounce it correctly, which is rare. I mean, but yeah, it's most common to onset in puberty. In the span of a couple of years, being a lifelong condition at the same time. So I was, 15 or 16 years old. I was a teenager. So most of the time we're children. There's some edge cases around that where it presents for the first time late in life or a little bit earlier. But for the most part, it's most common that's in puberty.
Ron, I'm going to interrupt you real quick. Do you have something playing in the background? I hear like an echo.
No.
No? Okay. Maybe it's
I don't hear it.
Move it closer. Is that better?
There you go. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So should I repeat that? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, you described it pretty well. It's a disease that commonly onsets in puberty. There are some edge cases outside of those common years, but yeah, you were right. You were correct. One thing I might clarify though, HS is not acne. It doesn't share a similar pathology or chain of events. So acne is caused by bacteria and has its own kind of standalone pathogenesis or chain of events or pathology. It's not the same thing that's happening with HS. HS is caused by environmental factors, possibly genetics and hormones and such. So while the European name for it is acne inversa, over here being HSC in the United States, it's a little bit of a misnomer. And there's some stigma around awareness of that, where we often can't get proper treatment because people just think it's acne, which it's not. So I just wanted to clarify that quickly.
Well, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, but patients get pretty uppity about that sometimes too, right? Especially when we all want to be acknowledged. And how you were very much accurately describing a very stigmatized, taboo-like disease, an invisible disability by design when we can cover it, right? But definitely a very taboo-like, stigmatized disease that people suffer with for possibly decades in a lot of cases.
So when you discovered you had it, what was the very first symptom or sign that came about for you?
Oh, I remember it very vividly. And without going into a lot of detail, I was in a shower one morning, and a boil presented on my thigh. So you mentioned it presents in intimate areas, and that's true. It's most common in what's called the apocrine sweat gland bearing areas, where there's a big consolidation of sweat. It can occur anywhere on skin, but it's most common and most prevalent in areas where there's consolidated hair. So your armpits, groin, genitals, thighs, and backside areas and portions of the body, the buttocks. So yeah, for me, I remember to this day. I think I was 16. If I wasn't 16, I was 15. Around 1995. I'm 37 now. And one morning, what everybody would think started as a boil on my thigh presented itself.
And so it was like a bubble boil on your thigh, and then did it fester? Did you worry about it? I'm a picker.
Yeah,
did you try to pick it?
Yeah, that's the whole.
Whenever I see something like that on my body, I like squeeze it till it's gone.
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely a major skin to mind psychodermatological kind of aspect. And in many, many ways, that's something that we could spend hours on another show, maybe. But
Right.
absolutely, it presented small, and it probably became over, a day or two. I'm trying to remember back into about a golf size ball event, for lack of a better term. So yeah, picking, you could say you could pick at it. I won't go into great detail, but you could imagine. And when they come in 2s and 3s and 4s and 18s and 20s, start to go in different parts. Yeah, you're going a little bit crazy picking, for lack of a better term, right?
Right.
Or even as a teenager, kind of a sensitive subject, maybe even cutting a little bit too. As you can imagine, right?
Right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say,
I was going to say,
like, chirping thing. I don't know if it's us though.
Yeah, Proof. Are you on speaker? Proof.
Yeah. What do you need?
Oh, we just hear like a background noise. I was just wondering if you have your phone on speaker.
Yeah, I don't have a cell phone.
Oh, okay. The sound is just kind of off.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It seems to be when I start
No, that's
talking.
okay. So, now you suffered this. It got worse and worse, obviously, and you started to notice more things appearing on your body that didn't seem normal.
Yeah.
Was there a time where you were concerned that maybe you had something that wasn't normal, or what point did you discover that?
Well, this is where it gets a little bit taboo. Like, so yeah. If you go by probably the most historically used staging system, it's a 3-stage disease that people use for quick kind of diagnostics.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, 1 turned into 2 and 3, and as you were kind of describing, some of them connecting and creating tracking and sinus tracking and subdermal wounds and such in the skin. But it also moves to other parts of the body. Now, again, this is a really touchy subject. I don't have any shame talking about this disease, obviously, anymore, so I'll just come out and say that at the time. And this was my story for many, many, many years. And after I found out what it was not too long ago and met a community of 1,000, it's also a very common story that we get was worried about it that morning in the shower. And the first place you go is to STDs, obviously. I have a story that I blogged about before about one of the first intimate relationships that I had as a teenager and a girlfriend that I broke up with, and she ended up moving away shortly after that. And then I had moved down to a different climate from upstate New York into Florida where this disease started presenting, and I thought that she had given me an STD. So, but over the years, you create your own stories around that, and maybe you do some light research or try to hide from research, or really trying not to want to know what it is as much as possible, to be as apathetic as possible about it. We kind of know it's not at certain points, and I'm one who never sought treatment for over 20 years, up until probably about 2 years ago. But even when some people do go to get treatment, it's misdiagnosed as acne. It's misdiagnosed as other dermatological conditions or on spot checks STDs, right?
Right.
And with any decent kind of investigation, it's clearly not. But that's what most of us deal with. I get rather emotional when I talk and write about it too.
I bet.
That most of us deal with it as children. It takes our childhood away from us as teenagers, and we never kind of get it back.
Right.
So it was that morning in the shower, presented on my leg, and it was obviously abnormal. And I knew it was something not from this world that I had never seen before or experienced. And you did mention about morbidity and the levels of pain, and we could talk about inflammation as a skin disease. inflammatory markers are much higher than even the most common stuff. Everybody probably knows what psoriasis is, for example, or knows someone who may or may not have it, or at a minimum seen a commercial on television or something. The quality of life impacts that we deal with, and inflammatory markers and pain levels are over the top. Further commonly known as severe skin disease.
I can imagine.
It is technically categorized as an inflammatory skin disease.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, anytime you get any kind of skin irritation or ingrown hair or whatever, those are painful. So I can imagine a cluster of something like that would be extremely painful.
Yeah, and I'm being blessed to know so many different patients and varying degrees of severity, but many of them in the most severe circumstance helps to put my own challenges in perspective as well. So I don't often want to play the victim or such. There's many people that have dealt with this disease a lot worse than I have, even over the years, and as I do now.
So now that you have had this condition for so long, and you said you did finally get diagnosed, and did you feel like the doctor who did diagnose it, were they very helpful?
Absolutely not.
No. When the doctor that did diagnose it, were they familiar with the condition, or did they have to do some research as well?
I think they lean on us as patients a lot. If we're well, let me put it this way. I don't want to paint a picture that's not exactly accurate. And you and I were talking back and forth some messaging when we were kind of educating ourselves about what this might look like today. That over the last 3 to 5 years, interest in research and treatment for this disease has changed significantly in a big way. It's an orphan disease, meaning, let me put it this way. It was once thought to be a rare disease. It's now known to be fairly common, but because of the stigma and the hiding and all the taboo and us not seeking treatment for so long, it's what's called an orphan disease, and then with a huge lack of awareness, right? So it's common, like you said, 1%, numbers go up to 4% depending on where you're at in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, 1 second.
Oh, that's okay. So I was, the reason I was asking is because my daughter, when my firstborn had a skin condition, taking her to the doctor was just ridiculous. I had to change pediatricians 5 times to figure out what was wrong, and nobody could tell me what was wrong. And finally, the last doctor who diagnosed it did the same thing, thought, with the STD, because you said this condition sometimes goes diagnosed as a STD, or they might think it is. He thought I contracted an STD and gave it to my daughter during the pregnancy. And it was so embarrassing. I was a young mom, and he lifted up my shirt to see if I had anything without even asking. It was like, and then he was the one that did diagnose it, but he had to do some research. He did extensive research, and then he didn't even really care. He just, there's just no compassion with doctors sometimes.
I'm lucky to have found a good one. It took some time. If I said the one who diagnosed me wasn't helpful, it's not that it was a bad doctor. It's just he didn't have the work. And the point what I was trying to make, interest in the last 3 to 5 years has exponentially grown, because it's being an orphan disease that has been neglected in both healthcare and culture for hundreds, if not millennia, right?
Right.
So you and I were talking a little bit. A lot of the reason why there is more interest and more research within the last couple of years was a company by the name of AbbVie got an FDA approval for investigational treatment for Humira, which is like the Swiss Army knife of biologicals to treat autoimmune disease like RA or psoriasis and things like that. I won't talk about Humira. That's a different topic. But for the most part, if you can imagine, that's the highest grossing, highest selling pharmaceutical drug in history. I think it was pushing over $16 billion a year last year. So don't quote me on that, but pretty close. So my point is, before these last couple of years, things are changing. There's more of a primary care doctor awareness where there's the most need for that because that's the front line for the most times for people to be able to diagnose. So the biggest problem right there is with PCPs right now still not being able to diagnose, do diagnostics for this disease, to treat patients, and at the end of the day, get them a referral to a specialist, being a dermatologist. So now, if you fast forward 10, 20 years, patients were dealing with it in a much worse circumstance, going to get treatment, not getting answers. Even dermatologists would not know what this disease is. And I would say there's still cases of that out there, depending on what country you're in. The United States pretty much lags behind mostly everybody, on par with the UK in a lot of ways. But it's different in different places. But the awareness amongst the dermatological culture and professional culture has changed a lot in the last couple of years, because if you can imagine, if the biggest biopharmaceutical company out there needs to sell a drug, you're going to have a sales rep in every clinic around the world, right?
Right.
So in a lot of cases, it might just be as easy as to say, hey, that Humira that you use to treat your psoriasis patients or your RA patients or your IBS patients, oh, by the way, there's this other disease that you might see in people with what you think are boils. They're not boils either, but what you think are boils in their armpits or whatever. Oh, now we have this investigational treatment available. You can prescribe it. So it's not like just something kind of washed over the world of dermatology real quick, and all of a sudden they're all aware. But there's very much a big free market kind of force behind that, to put it gently, right?
So you're saying that Humira is a drug that dermatologists like to use, and it's something that they will prescribe to people with HS?
As of I think probably around 2 years now, don't quote me, when it was approved for investigational treatment in the United States. It's a little bit different depending on what country you're in over the last couple of years. Yeah. Yep. So psoriasis patients, it's a treatment for psoriasis.
They're the ones that use it the most.
Oh, well, I think it treats 9 different diseases, autoimmune diseases. Yeah. Yeah. So, but if you go back, I talk a lot about academic publishing, meaning, an academic paper is published in a journal somewhere in the world on X whatever, on X subject, right? So if you it's really easy to look at numbers, and I talk about this a lot. Over the last couple of years, you can see those numbers growing. So for example, and again, don't quote me on this, let's just say around 150 papers have already been produced this year, 2017, right? In 2016, there might have been 103 or 98, and 2015 there might have been 70, and then 60. But if you go back 5 years and you go back another 45 years, 45 years or previously, it was flatline, 1 to 2 papers a year, 0, 1 to 2 here and there, and you can look at those metrics. It's a lot of things that I'd like to look at and study as far as natural science of this disease, right? So if you can imagine, it was first documented in medical journals in the mid 1800s, around there, where people put a name to it and started talking about it, and it's been around for forever, right? It's kind of surreal when you come into the space and you start meeting people. How many people come out to say, "Yeah, I have this too," and
right,
and are hiding it, for no pun intended around that. But yeah, you can imagine if it's flatlined and nothing going on for the last 45 years, then there's all of a sudden all this activity around that. On a good note, I think I was saying, I don't want to make it sound like something it's not. Over the last couple of things are changing for the better comparatively to the past, but it's still not enough. So being an orphan disease with a lack of research and a lack of interest, things are exponentially growing for us in a big way right now. Just looking to the academic publishing and treatments available and the activity around research. But you compare it to any other disease out there, and it's still very much pathetic, especially when you take it up against the numbers of prevalence, if it's 1% of the world population at a minimum.
Right. So, you and I were talking. I told you my ex-husband had what he called a pilonidal abscess, which was a cluster of hairs at the top of like the buttocks crack there, and it festered kind of like what you're talking about internally, with lots of pus and blood and festering. And what they did is surgery. Like, they hacked him to all get out. They cut half of his buttocks out. He had to have skin grafts and all kinds of
Wow.
stuff.
Well, then you can imagine that's also kind of known as HS as well back there. Just to elaborate on that a little bit, there's a syndrome called the follicular occlusion syndrome, or what's called the follicular occlusion tetrad or triad. So what your husband has, colonial cyst disease in the back, aka it's also known as Jeep Riders disease from World War II, HS and colonial disease and acne conglobata, which is very severe acne, and another one is kind of like HS of the scalp. I can look up the names exactly. I'll butcher them, so I won't. But basically, there's four diseases that make up what is the follicular occlusion tetrad or syndrome. And what your husband had is one of them. It's subject to comorbidity or coexisting diseases. There's four of them that come together. So for us, and it's all follicular in orientation, the failure of the hair follicle and aberrant immune response, creating extra inflammation that shouldn't be there for the most part, but they all share a similar pathology or a chain of events, right? So if you have HS that's existing in the armpits, for the most part in the groin, in the buttocks, and you have familial disease, which is on the cleft of the peak of the tailbone right there, and there is a gland there. Then you have severe acne, the face, and the scalp. That's four diseases that makes up that syndrome. So it's funny you bring it up like that. So you've probably been closer to this disease in your husband than you think.
Yeah, he went through a lot with that, and it was misdiagnosed, as you with your condition can be misdiagnosed for a very long time, and then when he finally found a doctor who specialized in it and had successful outcomes of removing it. But yeah, they had to just pretty much slaughter him. I couldn't even look at the wound. I walked in the hospital room and I had to walk out. It was horrible. But
it's something very familiar to us. I have a history of it as well. Not severe, but I do. Yeah, bless him. Huh?
Doing my research on HS, I was seeing that some people do have to resort to surgery. Have you met people that have resorted to surgery with that?
Oh, absolutely. Definitely. Surgery's probably been the only go-to historically over the last couple of decades, right? And at times, the proper procedures weren't standardized. They weren't well known. A lot of patients have suffered from very bad and botched surgeries or recurrent stuff. That's gotten a little bit better in the recent history. There's different procedures I won't go into now. But yeah, for severe disease, dermatologists will should follow evidence-based medicine in a series of treatments to try to manage this condition, because it's so different from every individual to a different individual, right?
Right.
And with your husband, sounds you mentioned skin grafting. So at Endgame, there's what's called local excision surgery. Then there's wide excision. It sounds like your husband might have had a combination of both a little bit.
We have to clarify in case anyone's listening. It's my ex-husband. I don't want anybody to think it's my current husband. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but definitely surgery. I was in myself for a surgical eval last
year. You were? Uh-huh.
Yeah, with good care, and my disease activity is low right now, so I'm waiting. But if I had my choice, I would get some old stuff cut out in a lot of different ways right now. But it's still kind of hard to. It's not good any way you look at it, right?
Right. So now, after you have an area that heals or maybe is subsiding, do you have a lot of scar tissue as well with that?
It depends on the patient, and I would say that there's emerging research coming out into different phenotypes of HS, meaning different types of how the disease presents, right? Some people scar horribly. Like the worst horror movie you'd ever seen, right? And some people don't, right? Some people are in the middle, and I won't get into some of the phenotypical research, but there's other coexisting disease variables that come into place that might inform that. So yes, scarring can be extremely severe, extremely severe, or not.
So I bet you find the wonders of the internet have really helped people in situations like yours where they're not quite sure what's wrong with themselves. And, you know, you can get on the internet and punch in your symptoms and then it comes up. And then, you know, what's wonderful too about social media is you can talk to people about it and share information. And have you found to get any help? I know I'm sure you got help from researching information on the condition, but do you get much support from friends on the internet through social media, and do you find comfort in that?
Well, one thing maybe we didn't talk about real quick when I was.
Oh, I'm sorry. We don't have to jump the gun.
No, not at all. One thing maybe you and I didn't discuss is when I was working, I've worked since 2015, but I had a 2-decade-long career as a graphic designer in new media, user experience, architect, and print design and such. So I've been around the evolution of the internet and art and design space for a long time. So when I found out what this disease was just 2 years ago, that's the first thing that I did. I actually never let myself until 2015 try to seriously find out what this was. And when I actually hopped on the internet, it didn't take long, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, if that. And there's a long story. There's a long kind of bittersweet story within that I've written about a lot. So I won't go into it now. But yeah, it was earth-shattering and mind-opening and tragic and traumatic at the same time.
I bet that was very emotional. It's almost a relief to know, you know, that the suffering you've been going on has a name and that there's other people suffering from it as well. And it gives you a sense of relief, but then also probably a sense of anguish as well because it's there.
I would say, Paula, honestly, it's kind of undescribable. It's really hard to explain. I'm not sure I've ever done justice trying to do it. I don't think I'll do it now on your show. But yeah, I mean, it was beautiful and it was traumatizing. I probably went through my own little PSD, I'm sure, post-traumatic stress kind of event or something like that. For me personally, when I did find it on the internet and traced it down, now it's just in my nature and with our work in my former career that let me put it this way: I'm just a nerd. I'm geeky, right? So I immediately just kicked into overdrive, and I did what I've always done in this space: started building websites, and I had been an advocate in activism within disability for a couple of years already with a former organization for myself and with a friend and I built. So I just kind of pivoted real quick.
Nice.
Essentially changed my life and restarted it all in this space as an advocate and activist. Now that's a longer story.
Right.
But yeah, finding people online shortly thereafter, I found some information on this disease and put a name to it. I found a Facebook group. Then I found 30 Facebook groups. You know, made 10, 20, 100 thousands of friends overnight, pretty much.
Awesome.
And found a really active small community of patients that are together seeking support and answers, right? But even when I did try to go find good relevant information, there was a lot of scary stuff online, a lot of misinformation because the orphan status of this disease and the lack of awareness, right? There's not a lot of reliable information, and what you do find, there's so much out there all over the place. There's never really been any single place where you could find maybe a standardized definition where they all agree with each other and stuff, and therefore that informs the patient culture as well. If you can imagine, right? Because it's been a big mess for everybody, and it still is in a lot of ways.
Well, your activism, I'm sure, has helped thousands of people with your condition because I know you're very active and you're very supportive of all the groups, and I see you've done your research extensively, which is awesome. You know, we always, humans have a need to know, and once we find that information, it's very comforting. Even though you still suffer from the condition, at least you can deal with, you know, the reality of it.
Yeah, my children for me are a driving force. Not, you know, of course, all of our friends in our community and stuff is, and the need for millions of people out there who are. You know, I say this a lot again. There was this. We're talking about it right now. I had decades of darkness and no clarity or no answers, and I didn't want them. right?
Right.
And then the best day, you just get by being apathetic and trying not to deal with this stuff. My children are driving force for me. They're
That's
okay
awesome.
now. They're okay now, but I have a hereditary. Not all forms are hereditary, but there is disease activity that runs in lines of families, right?
How old are your children?
17, 11, and 8. I have one going into school tomorrow, this year, this coming year. Pretty soon.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So since we're talking about family and children, you have your sweetheart there, Fawn. You want to bring her on and we can say hello to Fawn now?
She's sitting over there making ducky gestures with her hands.
Oh, she is. Well, why don't you tell us how you met Fawn first? Tell us how you met her.
Well, I'll mention it. Maybe let her explain a little bit.
Okay, that'll be good.
Yes, in 2015 when I found about this disease and I found stuff online and I found Facebook, connected in a Facebook group.
Oh, that is awesome. Facebook is wonderful.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure she feels it's so wonderful, but I'll let her.
No, I have a love-hate relationship with Facebook as well.
I am a man at the end of the day. What are you gonna do? Here she is.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Fawn. How are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm good. I know we're keeping you up late. So you met Ron in a Facebook group. Now, you guys both lived nearby each other, and you realized that, or?
We did. We actually lived about 30 miles from each other. So
nice.
We were really close.
That's awesome. So back in 2015. Now, tell me, when did you realize that something may be wrong and you had some type of symptom that was appearing? How old were you when you had symptoms appearing with your HS?
I was actually 9 years old.
Wow.
But at that age, I had no idea, not even the first clue. But it definitely progressed and got worse during my teenage years. It started on my thighs, and I did have some activity also in my upper groin, which my grandmother happened to be a nurse, and I did speak to my mom about the area in my groin, and she sent me to see my grandmother, and she said I had a boil. Well, I didn't show her anything else. I didn't show her my size because at the time I was overweight. I've always been on the heavier side. So I thought the reason that I was getting these lesions on my thighs was due to being overweight and my thighs rubbing together.
Mm-hmm. So they appeared on the inside of your thighs and in the groin area. And what did you think they were?
When at 9, I thought it was probably a bug bite.
Right.
I mean, honestly, I didn't know. You know, I was still a kid. You don't know a whole lot at 9 years old, and you know, it's one of those things where you just didn't want to tell anybody. You didn't want to show anybody.
Right.
And it's pretty much that way for a majority of patients for a very long time.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how long did you suffer with the condition before you got diagnosed?
I was actually diagnosed at the age of 38.
Wow.
So from 9 to 38.
Wow, almost 30 years.
I didn't have an official diagnosis until then. I had been misdiagnosed, but again, you know, I went in to see a nurse practitioner and I only showed her my breast, and she diagnosed me with contact dermatitis. But I never kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together because I never heard of HS. And as
Right.
far as what was going on with the rest of my body, I could always kind of come up with my own answer as to why it was happening. So I never put together that it was actually one condition.
So the doctor that finally diagnosed you, did you feel comfortable with his diagnosis when the doctor told you, or her?
Well, I had actually found information about HS prior to being diagnosed. And looking at some of the photographs and reading some information, I was pretty much convinced, that's what I had. I just needed to have somebody basically confirm it.
So when you went to the doctor, did you present your research to them and tell them that that's what you think you have, and you just wanted
No.
No.
I actually had kind of a strange experience with HS. I had flares all up and down my sides, from like my breast down to my hips, which is kind of rare but not impossible. And I had actually been seeing a dermatologist, ironically, for cystic acne, and I was at a regularly scheduled appointment. And I just happened to, I don't know, I guess work up the courage, and I just lifted up my shirt and I asked him what it was, and he said right away. He knew right away.
He did, huh?
Yeah. So it was a good experience for me, but it took a long time to get there.
Now, was this a dermatologist you said that diagnosed?
It was a dermatologist. Yeah.
So, is there anything special that you and Ron have discovered together that helps subside or deal with the symptoms at all? Do you notice anything different that you do that helps it, or where you might go into some type of remission for a little bit?
Not particularly for us. It's so different per patient, really. There seems to be different triggers, mind you, for patients. I find that mine is more hormonal. When my hormones fluctuate, my HS is worse. Others seem to have more activity with certain foods or maybe inflammatory foods. It really varies a lot by patient.
So has your condition, what stage is your condition in?
I am mild to moderate. I actually just had an appointment a few weeks ago at Penn State Hershey, and I was a little disappointed with the appointment because I have some areas that I feel at this point are probably in need of some surgery, but with HS, it's almost like it comes and it goes. I mean, it's always there, but you can have periods where your HS is quiet, and then maybe a day to a week to a month, it's just overactive. So even going to see any kind of doctor at times can be very difficult because you might get an appointment to see a doctor or dermatologist, and your HS might be having a quiet period, and they kind of look at you, and they're oh well, it doesn't look so bad. But then a week or two later, you could have like 30 flares going on. So
is that what you term it when it happens? You call it a flare?
I call them flares, yeah. I mean, some people call them flares, lesions. People refer to them as boils. But yeah, it's definitely one of those conditions where there's very little control, and you can't determine one day from the next like what's going to be happening. I've already woke up in the morning, and by the end of the day, I had a new flare. It comes on that. It can come on that quick.
Wow.
It's really hard to manage.
Mm-hmm. Do you notice when you are going to have a flare? Do you have any kind of internal sensation?
I've experienced like burning sensations, like stabbing pain. I've heard that from other patients as well. Different areas on the body present different sensations for me. Some areas are a little bit more sensitive than others, I think, and I think that's why I feel the different pains that I do before a flare presents itself.
Right. Because it is internally, so it must fester within before you can actually see it, right, on the external.
Right.
My cousin who referred me to you all, she said she went to the dermatologist just recently for her first time for her condition, and the dermatologist suggested certain vitamins. Do you notice that any kind of supplements or anything like that helps?
I haven't, but there again, it varies so much by patient. I do have low vitamin D, which I've been, taking supplements for about a year and a half, but that hasn't made any significant difference with my HS.
No. Now, Ron said he has 3 children. Do you have children of your own as well?
I do not.
No.
I share Ron's.
You share Ron's kids.
And his dog.
Oh, cute. So, do you find comfort in joining the Facebook groups and talking with other people that have your condition?
I do. When you have this condition and you don't know what it is and you don't tell anybody, you think it's only you. You live so much of your life so long thinking like you're the only one in the world that could possibly have this. And then, that day comes when, you realize that you start to get answers and you find others, and it's overwhelming. It's like Ron said, it's you're happy, because you realize for once, you're not alone with this condition, but it's also very sad because you see so many who are far worse than what I am, or it gets really bad for a lot of people.
I bet. It can be probably lonely at times as well, because the condition does affect private areas and can look probably festering and ugly, and you don't want to show yourself to anybody.
Yeah, it's very isolating, and that's it affects people very deeply on an emotional level.
I bet. I noticed the reason why I was even aware of your condition, that about HS, is I was listening to Pandora, and there was a commercial, I forget how they presented the slogan, but basically to research HS, and that's all they said. So I'm wondering if there's groups that are promoting this awareness financially with commercials and that sort of thing. Are you involved in that at all?
I think
Rita?
I'm gonna hand you back to Ron.
To Ron, okay. It was really nice to talk to you. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
You take care, Fawn. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, Paula. That Pandora ad that you saw, we were speaking of AbbVie and Humira not long ago in that investigational FDA approval for treatment of HS patients. I believe the slogan you probably saw was "No BS about HS."
Yes, that's what it was.
Yep, that's AbbVie. That's Big Bio. So they've been working in their own right, not for on the same topic we were talking about earlier. Free
so they're pushing their medications. That's why they made that commercial.
Yeah, I won't go into that on either side of that fence. I'll be on a show about that right now. So, I mean, just to answer your question, yeah, they do have their own efforts in biopharmaceutical money worldwide going on for what they call global awareness campaigns, right? So there's remarketing ads running on Pandora in different places. I'm not sure why you were served that ad for the most part. Maybe because you have some kind of interest on your phone looking at healthcare and medicine and stuff like that. So it probably served a medical ad. Patients come out in groups a lot and say, "Hey, I saw this on Pandora, and we're finally getting awareness." But that's not so much the case because it's remarketing in quotes. So Google, for example, or Pandora is serving an ad based upon what it knows of your search history and keywords and interest, right? So it's matching its marketing tailored to your behavior. So it's not like they're going out and running commercials and stuff to the general public yet.
I see.
Well, I mean, let's hope. Let's hope they do.
Right.
You know, I mean, pharmaceuticals are not. I'll take whatever anybody can get as far as HS awareness is concerned. At the end of the day, to live a more fulfilled life and have better treatment. So that's all good. Thank God we finally have something behind us, right or wrong, right now where we haven't for decades that we talked about.
Right.
So we're not involved in them. No. We have no association, but we have started our own organization. We're currently fundraising to get our 503c
nice
off the in our nonprofit right now. But something Fawn and I did back after we met, because I had that career as a graphic designer, a web designer, and I found it really hard to find information online, reliable sources. That's what we started to build. So, HSAWARENESS.org is our archival site for academic publishing and science and stories and you name it. We just built. It's really the largest singular kind of resource right there for everything around HS, including global affairs, academic scientific abstract publishing.
Nice.
So, because I'm one of those geeky PubMed Google Scholar. The site tracks and publishes abstract posts on all new studies and legacy posts. I think there's over 30,000 pages on the site or some odd right now.
Wow.
So the site tracks and publishes on all the medical journals around the world. Anything, for the most part, that comes up with an HS keyword in it will be published to that site. And
that's awesome.
We have all kinds of other different programs we're working on. I think we were talking about our patient stories program and book publishing. And, me as a social media marketing, expert enthusiast by necessity over the years of my career in art and design. I've been able to not just build these sites, but we build a rather robust social networking kind of umbrella. So not only we publish to these websites.
So you have first on hand. You're in there designing the website and helping build the website as well. Then.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do it all. Yeah, it's just us.
Nice.
A couple of people help.
Good for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, when I found out what this was, it was kind of a traumatic moment, and I have other health issues going on besides just HS that have left me unemployed since 2015. So this is all I've pretty much done since. So our organization is basically a publishing platform to combat and create this lack of awareness epidemic or pandemic, or however you want to say it, right?
Right.
That's debatable. So, I mean, I like to say a lot with hashtags. We are HS awareness, hashtag HS awareness for Endgame, hashtag HS support, because a lot of what we're talking about tonight, that lack of clarity and that darkness, not having answers, putting a name to this disease, the mental health implications, in my humble opinion, do inform the physical. So you can imagine after so many years, 30 years, like Fawn, our quality of life is rather diminished, both physically and mentally. So for me, getting answers or at least a pursuit to answers where there has been none historically is a big deal for me. And that's why we are HS Awareness as an organization, this nonprofit. We're trying to get out, because by creating awareness, essentially that trickles down to support for patients like ourselves too. To sound philosophical,
and I commendable. I do a lot. Hats off to you. It's very commendable that you're going out of your way, because I'm sure it's helping lots of. I know it's helped my cousin. She, I'm sure she didn't know what she was suffering from, and she praises your work and.
I'd like to send that praise back a lot too, because big deal. I can make websites and stuff, but it's we have a lot of pride in where we're at. Shortly out of the game, we got articles up on CNN Health about this. We've been able to do so many things and met so many beautiful people and have those tragic and dark experiences and beautiful and wonderful experiences. It's just all extremely, extremely, extremely surreal and unexplainable. As far as I'm concerned, this disease and whatever this movement is, or this awakening again, because it is so common, right? And I say that because everybody knows another HS patient. You just maybe don't know it. I mean, your husband, in fact, dealt with an umbrella of our condition, right?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Very, very, very close. People will call that HS.
Right.
I mean, they do and they will. So yeah, believe it or not, your husband might. That's one of the treatable forms of it if we're crossing over labels and naming things. But it's a big deal. I almost think I definitely say it's something historical going on. It's a milestone, something really historical. If it's not historical on a cultural level, it's absolutely historical and within medicine, I would say, at a minimum. At a minimum, sure, there's really, it's not the most severe skin disease out there, because there's really, really rare ones, right? That are really, really scary, but those are ultra rare. What's the big deal about HS is that there's so many people in the shadows, and they don't need to be.
Right.
I understand why. I definitely understand why I hit this.
I'm sure your activism with your website and your knowledge and you spreading knowledge has really helped a lot of people. Because when you don't know what's wrong with you, it's like you just want to know what's wrong. Like you really, I mean, even if you can't cure it, it just helps to know what is wrong.
That's where I'm at. I think that goes a long way. I think that's the first step that takes you, compared to where we're at, over the decades of the years. Wherever anybody lands within that, you're absolutely spot on, right? Yeah. That little bit, I mean, we can't really get ultimate clarity and resolution, something I write about a lot. Again, I write a lot. Did I say that? But we can't really get clarity and resolution, but I feel strongly that the pursuit of that is very much therapeutical.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me the name of the website again, so that people might be able to go check it out, or give information about where people can learn more about HS.
Sure. In short, HSAWARENESS.org.
Okay. HSAWARENESS.org. And then there's Facebook groups in case somebody is curious or might be suffering from the same condition, where they might be able to get some friend support. Yeah. What Facebook groups do you belong to? What are they called?
Oh, I'm in probably dozens and dozens of them. They're in various
What's the main one that you would recommend for HS awareness?
Oh, ours, of course. I mean, if you pop into Facebook, you do a search, you're going to come up with a lot of them. And there's big ones and there's small ones. There's some that are active. There's some that are not. There's some that are focused on dietary changes and holistic stuff, which is great for people when it works. And if it works, that's awesome, I think. And our group is it's hashtag HS Global. And if you can imagine, I am proud that the publishing that we do and the focus on curating and syndicating current affairs and content is a big deal, including scientific and academic research and work. I like to think we're rather unique in regard and needed. I mean, I feel that everything that we put together and I started is responding to a very real need. So you would search for HS Global on Facebook to join our international group. There's also groups in languages. I'm in groups from Germany to Israel to the Middle East to the Nordic countries in South America. They're all
Isn't
out
that
there.
awesome to connect with people in a different country too? Because
their
cultural experiences probably change the dynamics of everything. Different types of doctors and different modesty. I noticed different cultures have different modesty.
You would think, and another really beautiful thing that happened to me when I came into this space and was very vocal and loud about it is I had an opportunity. I do some creative awareness filmmaking for us, interviewing patients or just doing my thing. And I had an opportunity, was flown over to Germany for a couple of weeks, and I got to spend time with German patients and made some very close friends. And one of our flagship short films that hopefully will piece together with many over time to create a documentary I'm working on for awareness. He's a very good little German man that I met over there and still very much a good friend of mine. But, to answer your question, sure, there's cultural differences and there's obviously tactile stuff like what's available in certain countries for treatment or education or whatever. But at the end of the day, in any language, you would hear the same kind of context and theme that you heard from us tonight, talking with anybody in any other language. The stigma, the hiding. It's the same for all of us. If you have translators, Google Translator, which I'm addicted to, which is wonderful. I speak with patients in different languages is all the time that I can, and I embarrass myself a lot, but I try. Right? And now within Facebook groups and certain kind of taxonomy, the technological kind of feature sets on Facebook, there's translators, right? So that comes in handy when and if they're used, if in quotes. And then into our websites, we have a couple other HS websites. HSAWARENESS.org is the main one, but I have Google translators built into all the sites so you can essentially access and consume and digest the content.
That's awesome. You're like bringing the whole world together over this.
I wouldn't go that far, but I'll take it. I'm trying.
It's nice because
I can't take credit for Google toys.
It's nice though that you can bring the awareness everywhere. Through the internet. The wonders of the internet is just amazing.
And I'll just add one more thing, and I'll stop rambling. But
go right ahead.
We're talking about us a lot, but there are other people out there doing very great things on the citizen science and the patient level as well. They're good people. So we a whole other show. We have some close friends who are doing really, really great stuff. So yeah, we're as strong as the community is with us, and I'm one of those wishy-washy philosophical guys all the time. I consider all these people my family, and I tell them I love them all the time. And
I'm that way with my Facebook friends too. I love all of them. They all bring joy and happiness to my life. And
you gotta.
Even though I'm just typing away on my computer, it brings a smile to my face sometimes.
Life's too short, right? Life's too short.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I am so glad that you shared your story with us, and I hope that maybe it reached out to somebody who might be suffering from this condition and they're not quite sure what it is, and maybe they think, maybe that's what I have, and maybe they can do some research and go to your website and
we're not hard to find. Our stories are published out there. My full name is Ron Bercume. If you go to HSAWARENESS.org or even Facebook, you hit any kind of HS hashtag across the internet, you'll find me. And I'm available to everybody if they have questions and support. And that's one thing we absolutely love to do is introduce new patients into this community, that day one, that ground zero, like we experienced not that long ago ourselves, right?
Right. And make sure you tell Fauna that I really appreciate her coming on and sharing her story as well.
Yeah, thank you, Paula.
I don't know if my co-host is still there. Are you still there, Proof? I think he might be taking a break.
I'm here just waiting.
Oh, you are here? Okay. I know they can't do a long interview because they're on the East Coast and it's getting late over there for them.
An hour. It's an hour is usually all I do.
So we really appreciate. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Proof, before we let them go?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you, Proof.
Well, thank you guys for your sharing your story and providing information where people might be able to go to learn more about HS.
And thank you guys for giving us the platform. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Paula.
Awesome. Thank you, Fawn. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Good night to you guys. Thanks.
Okay. Good night.